Hello, everybody, and welcome to Silent Podcasts, where we are anything but silent. This is our brand new House of the Dragon coverage called Fire and Pod. We are here today with our panel that's going to be covering House of the Dragon throughout the season. I am your host, Katie. Some of you may know me from Real Housewives, Big Brother, all over the place. I'm here with Josh. Josh, how are you?
Doing great. I'm excited to talk some Game of Thrones prequel here.
Awesome. And Chanelle. Chanelle, how are you?
I'm good. I'm super stoked to talk about this. I don't come on many pods often, but when I do, it's Game of Thrones.
I'm honored to have you here. When you said you were into it, I was like, yes, Chanelle's into this. I'm excited. So this is super exciting. I wanted to talk a little bit with you guys first about like just your history with Game of Thrones, what you thought, how, what your relationship to the show is. Did you read the books? Did you watch the show? So Josh, tell me a little bit about your Game of Thrones journey.
Yeah. I definitely got into Game of Thrones, I think around season 2, because I think when I watched season 1, it was like binging the whole thing in like one day. And so after season 1, I definitely got hooked, somewhere around that time, and then just have watched, every week that it was out since then. I've also read the books, the ones that have come out. I haven't read some of the ancillary material. So like what we're going to be talking about with the prequel here, the stuff that's the source material for the show. I haven't read that, although I'm pretty familiar with the overall story. But yeah, as far as the Song of Ice and Fire books proper, I have read those. Again, the ones that are out, which I know is a touchy subject. We're going to be doing a lot of dancing here in this conversation around touchy subjects when it comes to Game of Thrones. And that's one of them. Obviously waiting for George R. R. Martin to finish this masterpiece of a series. But yeah, so I'm a big Game of Thrones fan. I've loved it until the end, which is now the time to talk about how this last series left off, because that obviously was, it's a very loaded part of the conversation entering into this whole series we're going to talk about.
For sure. And Chanelle, what about you? What's your history with Game of Thrones? Are you a show watcher, a book reader?
I hate the show. I'm not sure why I'm here. Not kidding. I'm both. So I actually initially started as a show watcher. My boyfriend at the time was like, "You got to watch this show," and I'm like, "Nah, this sounds dumb. Dragons and magic and whatever. Like this, what's going on here?" But I watched the first episode, and like that episode was pretty action packed. And I'm like, I need to watch more. So after watching the first season, I was just like really hooked. I really wanted to know more, but I didn't really want to wait until the next season. So I started reading the books, kind of getting the background of everything. And I read those books so fast. I think I read every single book, even the fifth, because the fifth one I think came out, or I forget what season, but I even got the big edition of the book. That's like the hardcover that you can't fit into any purse ever, but somehow I managed to fit it in my purse on the bus and read that whole thing. So I've been a book reader. I play the games. I haven't read any of the novellas or anything like that, but I try to keep with like the main source material, but we'll see how House of Dragons goes. I might have to start reading, a lot of the Fire and Blood and all that kind of stuff, novellas and stuff that connect. But yeah, total fan, love Game of Thrones. Total House Targaryen, even with the whole ending and everything, still House Targaryen, because at the end of the day, I'm all about, the fire side of fire and ice. So, yeah.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm a show watcher. I was watching since season 1 on HBO, so I didn't have a ton of catching up to do. And I didn't read the books. I started reading some of them. I didn't really get through most of them, just because life. But I did dig through some of like the wikis and, just tried to I'm like deep in the subreddits of just trying to figure out what is the difference between the show and the books, and how is the story meant to be told. We've talked a little bit about the show itself, Game of Thrones, and the ending. Obviously, we know it's a touchy subject. I know it was not very popular. It seems like probably the three of us all agree with that and have a similar opinion. So were you excited when you heard that all of it? Well, originally there were a bunch of prequels that were announced, and I think most of them or all of them got scrapped except for this one. What were your feelings when you started seeing some of the trailers and when the show came out? Like, were you psyched? Were you like, I don't know about this? Because I was a little, I don't know about this.
Yeah, it feels like, someone's broken your heart once, and you had I feel like Game of Thrones had a great relationship, and then it ended pretty poorly
Yeah.
on a sour note. And now they're like, no, I'm fixed, I'm better, trust me. I've done a lot of work, I've gone to therapy, take me back. And I feel like I'm in a cautious optimism that the Game of Thrones crew, they've done their work. Maybe it's time to give them a second chance. So that's kind of where I am.
Yeah, I was excited because I feel like with anything that's before um the story that finished would kind of go back to the old school roots, early on Game of Thrones kind of stuff. So and obviously I'm a Targaryen fan, stan, whatever you want to call it. But I'm here for anything to hear about more about dragons, more about that history, more about that whole family, because they're crazy. So
Mhm.
I want to see all the craziness. I want to see all that kind of stuff. So I was really excited about this one, and the cast looks really good, and there's a lot of story to be told. So I'm excited to hear kind of the origins and everything like that. Um, I feel like it will go back to the roots of what made us really like Game of Thrones, which is just like a really rich story, really rich characters. So I'm excited. I was excited.
I was a little apprehensive, just because I feel like the ending of Game of Thrones left us so I can't think of something in pop culture that has had such a rise and then such a total plummet since the Game of Thrones finale. Like, I really can't think of anything where everyone's just like, okay, well,
My
that's over. Usually,
Yeah.
when shows end, even if they have a pretty bad ending, there's still like a lot of conversation about it, or some people agree, some people disagree. This felt like it ended and then no one talked about it anymore. It just left pop culture altogether. Like, nobody wanted to mention it.
We were busy crying,
Yeah, we
Yeah.
were all
so
busy mourning what it used to
drinking
be.
wine.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But then, then we heard all of the prequels coming out. Some of them got scrapped, so we were kind of like, I don't know, maybe this is not going to be that good. And now we're finally seeing some trailers of the show. We're hearing what the show is really going to be about. I think a lot of people, myself included, thought that maybe the show was going to be about Robert's Rebellion, but it is not. It's like 200 years before Robert's Rebellion,
Yeah.
which is exciting. I think it's going to tell a story that a lot of people don't really know and aren't super familiar with, like myself included. I haven't gone this deep into, the history of, the Targaryen family or Westeros in general. So I'm excited to learn a ton more about some of the players and the politics back then. So we could talk a little bit about what we know before we're going to kick off watching. So the show starts next Sunday, which is August 21st, sorry, and will be 10 episodes long. Supposedly each episode costs $20 million each, which is kind of wild.
Whoa.
Yeah, so
crazy.
I
No wonder
expect
they
there to
scrapped
be
the rest.
right, exactly.
Couldn't afford it.
Exactly. I expect that to mean there's going to be dragons everywhere. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, from the trailer, like some of the stuff I've been watching behind the scenes or whatever, it seems like it's very dragon heavy, and which makes sense because if you look at the lore of Targaryen, a lot of times what kind of solidifies you as like this Targaryen warrior is that you take control of a dragon, even like older warriors dragons, because dragons are like hundreds of years old or whatever. So, there has to be dragons. Like it just they're there. They're such a vital point. They show the strength of a Targaryen. So I feel like there's gonna be dragons all over the damn place.
Yeah.
Totally.
And even calling it House of Dragon, I know that is a metaphor and referring to the Targaryens, but I do think that that's also a promise that the show is making. Hey, come watch this show. There will be dragons.
Yeah.
And if there's not, a ton of dragons, then I think it will be disappointing, to be honest, for myself, but I'm sure for a lot of people as well. Because I do think that like they do that stuff really well. No matter what, season 8 of Game of Thrones gave us, like that was garbage. The like VFX, that kind of stuff has been really, really well done throughout the series. And so I think that like, I trust them to do the dragon stuff well as well. Not overuse it, but and stick to the more grounded character-based storytelling that we're used to. But I do hope to see some dragons.
Yeah, totally. And I totally agree with you. I think that was always the really high point, even when the story got a little wonky, especially towards the end. They still always gave us something really incredible to look at. So it should be really exciting to watch. And if the budget says anything, we're going to get a lot of visual effects. We're going to get a lot of dragons. And when you hear about the lore of like back in the day, it really does seem like when the Targaryens were in rule and they were at their height, dragons were everywhere. And, you know, they were, you know, warriors on the backs of dragons. So I'm expecting to see a good amount of that, which I'm excited for. That should be really very different than what we saw in the main show. Our showrunners are Miguel Sapochnik and Ryan Condal. So you guys may know Miguel Sapochnik. I don't know if his name is familiar to you, but he did direct a ton of some of our favorite, at least my favorite. I don't want to speak for you guys, but just the fandom's favorite episodes like Hard Home, Battle of the Bastards, Winds of Winter, The Bells, which questionable. That's the one where, you know, Daenerys kind of lost it, but you know, still a visually stunning episode. So hearing that Miguel Sapochnik is involved, that gets me excited because he always delivered in the main series. So that makes me have a lot of a lot more confidence than, you know, D&D. But Ryan Condal, I did look him up, and he doesn't really have very many notable credits at all. He gives me D&D vibes because I don't know if you guys know, but D&D really didn't have many credits to their name when they got the show, which is very surprising. And neither does Ryan Condal, who's the other showrunner. Do you guys have any thoughts about that? Does that make you nervous a little bit? Or do you feel like Miguel Sapochnik, maybe he's great. I mean, I don't really know, but
I feel like Miguel probably had a say because Miguel's probably the, you know, the veteran here. So I feel like he wouldn't just let some random person come. So I feel like he maybe trusts this other person. I'm gonna get, you know, and also even though the ending, whatever, I'm gonna give the studio like their credit. Like, we did get some really wonderful episodes. I feel like if they have Miguel on board, then they know what their vision is. So, you know, I feel like this person would follow it as well. Also, let's circle back on Miguel because the visuals alone from Battle of the Bastards is just
yes.
like, I'm so stoked now just hearing that because I didn't even know who the showrunners were. And now that I know that, like, you know, I see the $20 million now.
Yes.
I see it.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think that I'm very excited to have him at the helm, as well as George R. R. Martin is also a co-producer, and so he's given his blessing to the show as well. I know he's written on his blog saying that he's seen 9 of the 10 episodes.
Oh, great.
And that they're really good. He said, you know, the VFX have yet to be added, so he couldn't speak to that part. But as far as the storytelling goes, he said that they even added to some of the material that he said. So he gave them a compliment as far as like what he thinks. And that makes me feel good because, he was very involved in the beginning of the Game of Thrones series and then tapered off. You know, famously, of course, they ran out of his source material because he had yet to finish the series. And that's where, you know, the Game of Thrones series really went off the rails. So I'm very optimistic about the fact that there is source material for them to work off of, and they can just fill in, you know, a lot of the detail. It's like Chanelle already said, it's kind of a novella that they're going to stretch out into a series. So there's a lot of gaps to fill, but it's definitely like the overarching story is there, and I think that can help them in pacing and not run into the same issues. So I'm not worried. I think for the same reasons, like I'm not worried that they're going to do the exact same thing as what happened with Game of Thrones and that the ending is just going to be horrible or something. I think the prequel series and spin-off series already have their own pitfalls and traps that make me worried. I hadn't really ever thought prequel series were a good idea up until Better Call Saul, to be honest, which is finishing up this week, and very excited for that last episode tomorrow. But and I feel like if they take some notes from the Better Call Saul department, I think that they can do something really well, because I think I would have been much more skeptical, honestly, on a prequel series if it wasn't for Better Call Saul. And I think the biggest thing there that they've done super well, without giving any spoilers away or anything, is just that their prequel story serves the characters of that series before it serves the characters and story of the original series. So I feel like too many prequel movies like fill in kind of details from the original series or movie and just kind of like point at like, oh, like this is how that thing came to be that way in the movie that you saw. And it's just kind of like almost like just a series or show or movie full of Easter eggs. And then that's kind of emotionally hollow. But I feel like if you can do a prequel story that's really well done, that really is first and foremost about those characters, then and then it kind of is connected to like the main series, then I think you can like really, then it can be its own thing and enjoyed, with, I think, emotional resonance and things that like make the series feel like you can really dig your teeth into. And so I think that's where also it's a benefit that they're going back hundreds of years, that they're not dealing with Robert's Rebellion, that they're not dealing with that kind of thing that's like too close to the main story. Like we'll know some of these houses, we'll know the geography, like we'll know a lot of things that'll feel familiar, but it won't have to like rely on like the story of having watched the first series. So I think they can kind of just like start anew.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think what Better Call Saul has blown me away with, again, not to get too deep into Better Call Saul because it's not about Better Call Saul, but they lined up with the original story of Breaking Bad so well. And they really blurred the lines almost a little bit between the timelines. So you didn't even really know at this point that you're in the Breaking Bad timeline. And I would have been a little bit nervous if we were so close to Song of Ice and Fire timeline with this show. And it makes me feel a lot more comfortable because if you watched the Obi-Wan series, they kind of had to wrestle with this too. And it felt like there were a lot of things you could poke holes into or pacing issues or things that they felt like they were in a box. And I feel like I would have been a little more nervous about this show falling into the Obi-Wan issue if they were that close. So I totally agree with you, Josh. I think the hope is that with this brand new story to a lot of people, because they didn't really retell it in the main show, it's going to be almost brand new to a lot of people if they really aren't familiar with the books.
Yeah, and I'm kind of excited because they do have a bit of a time jump in this one. So it's like you're jumping 25 years back and forth for this one. So it's going to be cool to see like, the young version of like the princess and then the older version. Like it's just going to be cool to see the back and forth. But I'm glad they did that so that they can like progress the story a little bit further instead of like, let's start when they're little and then, it'd be a little slow, I think, if they did that. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that should be a really cool storytelling mechanism too that we'll be able to see.
For sure.
Yeah, and I'm excited. Like you're talking about jumping in time, it makes. I mean, we are getting Matt Smith, which is like the only actor that I am familiar with.
Yes.
On the show because I've seen The Crown, and he plays the annoying, what I call the annoying version of Prince Philip. I think it's. I hope I'm not getting that wrong. Prince Philip, I think, the Queen's husband.
Oh, and, yeah, Prince Philip.
Yeah, and it's when he's at his peak, like brat and annoying version, and
he
so
plays that role well, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So I think from what I know again of the overarching story for this series, I think I understand why he's kind of cast for this character. I mean, he's kind of a guy who gets passed over, right? I think for the throne, I think that's kind of a main point of the story, and so I'm excited to see him back because he is a great actor and made me hate him on The Crown. But also, as you were talking about the time jump, I was thinking about like it really does feel like this kind of like epic story about succession, of who's going to succeed, who's going to take the crown, who's going to take the throne, as these Game of Thrones stories really are about. And I feel like, again, like having watched The Crown, I feel like there's a lot of really good opportunity for a show like that to go back and forth between different timelines. And Game of Thrones is going to give them plenty of room to tell a story as complicated as that, and knowing that that's what they did in the first series, which was so complicated, trying to keep track of all the characters, and yet it felt so like again emotionally resonant in a way that wasn't just like this heady, convoluted web of people and relationships that made it so that you couldn't actually feel like and empathize with the characters. They somehow pulled that off in the original series, and I think like they start doing more time jumps and stuff, I think like I still trust them to get that right.
Yeah, totally. Let's jump a little bit into the plot since we're really leaning towards that anyway in the premise of the show. So as we mentioned, the show is set 200 years prior to the Game of Thrones Song of Ice and Fire timeline. And it's based on the Targaryen family, and it's about 100 years into their reign over Westeros. So it's after, they came over from Essos and conquered the area. So it really depicts the Dance of Dragons, which is what they call the civil war between the Targaryens, that two different Targaryens that both lay claim to the Iron Throne. So we have Viserys, who raised his daughter Rhaenyra. Do you guys know how to Renera?
I
Rhaenyra.
think it's
Rhaenyra?
Yeah,
Rhaenyra.
Renera, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. To succeed him. But after his death, his eldest son to his second wife, Aegon, is crowned the ruler. And this kicks off just a big war within the family. And it's based on the George R. R. Martin book, Fire and Blood, which you guys have both mentioned as a novella. That was, a supplemental story to Game of Thrones that from what I understand and what I've read about this book is that it's really written as a history book of the time. So the showrunner Ryan Condal has said that it communicates with the history book, and in a sense, the events will line up, but the story is going to be told very differently, which I think is really interesting. And Josh, it kind of lends to what you said about what George R. R. Martin maybe said in his blog about how they added some additional material, because it sounds like what he wrote in his book was very just factual, historical. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see what was added to that and kind of how they maybe dramatized it a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that gives them room to make a good story because they can treat it as if that's the historized version of it. So then also it's like, history books are never fully true. So if they change a few details here and there, that might not be how the history book, has it recorded. But here's how it really happened.
Yeah, they're just adding a little bit more sugar to it, I get that, and it's actually good because no one can really nitpick anything. They're just keeping to the history and then adding a little bit more that no one knew about. So we can't complain, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we've done a lot of complaining about Game of Thrones across
I just
the many
cried. I
years.
didn't complain. I
complained. I complained a lot. A lot. He also has said that it's going to be like Succession, but with dragons, which I find very exciting because I am a huge Succession fan. And if the show is anything like how political and the interactions and the inner workings between this family trying to gain power within each other, I think that's going to be really exciting to watch. And I'm also really excited to see the Targaryens in King's Landing because the whole time essentially in Game of Thrones, it was, aside from a little bit of season 1, it was the Lannisters ruling over King's Landing. So I'm really excited to see it in a different timeline with a different family. Maybe the economic climate might be different because if you guys remember in the show, everybody seemed pretty destitute, starving, unless you were really wealthy. So I'm interested to see kind of even just like what the temperature of King's Landing is and Westeros is in general.
I want to see Dragonstone. I'm excited. Like we got a little bit of Dragonstone, in the main series, but we only really saw it when it was, not Renly's, Stannis's, and I was like rum brother when Stannis had it, and he didn't really do anything with. There was nothing really going on there, and then Dany got it, but not for a long time. So I'm excited to see it like thriving with dragons. I want to see I forget her name, Renera, like her there because she rules it at some point because she takes it over when she gets older and whatever. So I'm excited to see some dragons there. I'm excited to see what it looked like when it was thriving. But yeah, what does King's Landing look like with actual Targaryens ruling it and it not burnt to the ground like it was by the end, by the time Dany finally got it, right? So it's gonna be cool.
Yeah, I think too, also getting to know the Targaryen family, like we know all these houses super well and kind of their character, their culture, like how they kind of fit in. And obviously things are gonna be very different. Even in the teaser trailer, it shows like, the Baratheons and the Starks like kneeling to the Targaryen throne there. But I'm just kind of excited to explore another house. We really only knew Dany.
Some new houses, You're gonna get some crazy houses that are gonna be ruling areas that are ruled by the houses that we know from the Seven Kingdoms. It's gonna be so wild.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it seems like there's going to be even like a little bit of because as we know, Renera is obviously a woman it seems like a lot of the trouble that she's not, I don't want to say trouble she's getting into, but the reason why so many people are against her taking the throne is because a woman isn't supposed to rule the kingdoms. And it's very interesting because Dany, obviously, Daenerys in Game of Thrones was very like, I want to break the wheel. I want to be a woman in power. And it seems like even hundreds and hundreds of years ago, this was going on in the house of the Targaryens. So I'm excited to see how maybe some of those dots get dots get connected, or maybe we can even tie some of Daenerys's character traits back to her family from hundreds of years ago. And I hope that we can, because I know one of my biggest complaints about Game of Thrones is that they really didn't do as much as I wish they could have with Daenerys's character. She was kind of a little flat or one note in a lot of areas, especially towards the end. So I hope that, with some of the things we learn in the series, it'll kind of even like retroactively flesh out her character a little bit
Get
more.
some context. We know
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
we'll know why they're crazy,
Exactly.
The years of inbreeding probably didn't help, but also they're
Yeah.
insane, right? And the whole woman thing is definitely the Great Council's fault. They popped it in I think it was like 101 or whatever, and we're like, nah, we're not gonna have a woman here, because technically it was supposed to be a woman ruling. Like, she had it was Viserys' sister. Her name is close to Renera's. It's like not Renera, that's the daughter, but anyways, it was supposed to be the sister. She had the claim to the throne, and then the Great Council came in and was like, hell to the no, but no one else will stop them, so
Right.
so I'm gonna blame the Great Council on this one. F them for that.
What do you
I'm
mean?
with you.
Councils of men are never
Yeah.
patriarchal and sexist.
What?
Maybe
No.
only
Those
in,
are bad?
Only in
Yeah.
Westeros do things like that exist.
Yeah, of
Totally.
course. Yeah.
Let's jump into some of the characters. I have some names written down. Might need you guys to help me if you know some of the lore behind these characters. I have some little notes I took just from some quick research I did, but we do have Damon. He's just known as a dragon rider, a warrior. He's supposed to be the Iron Throne, the heir to the Iron Throne when the series begins. I obviously don't believe that he ever sits on the Iron Throne or gets there. Do we know much about Damon that we can share today? Is it more so like, let's just find out when we watch?
Yeah, I think the basics we have about Damon is he is the brother of the king. So if you think of in relation, so the king had 3 children, but only one survived, his one daughter. So he had no claim to the throne. So Damon is technically the next claim to the throne, if you look at the order. But the king's like, you know what, I want my daughter to be it. So he was kind of fighting for that. But Damon's kind of a bit of a jerk from what I can see in the trailers so far. He seems very pompous. He seems very bratty. So he's gonna fight tooth and nail, I feel like, for this, from what I can see. But yeah, that's what I pick up from him. He's very pompous. He runs he switched jobs like a lot, I think, from what I can see from the novellas and stuff, because he's just all over the place. But yeah, I feel like he'll be a good warrior, but a jerk. But I think that's what makes a good warrior in Game of Thrones, right? Those pompous people.
Yeah. I think he's definitely well, one other thing I guess I'll just add is just that his dragon, like, so he has a dragon, and it is I think both of the main dragons, like Rhaenyra's and his, are like old, like they were like
old
passed,
warriors ones. Yeah.
so they were like passed down to them, like bequeathed, like by people that rode and fought on them before. So it's kind of like, it is interesting that we saw Daenerys' dragons as these baby dragons. Like, these guys are like battle tested warrior dragons who've seen it all, kind of thing. So both of their dragons are like that.
It seems like it's a big deal in Targaryen culture that, like, if you're gonna get a dragon, like, you want to try to conquer these like battle tested older dragons that were like warriors dragons, like big warriors in the Targaryen history. So both of them have those dragons to kind of prove it's the way to prove their worth, that they are worthy of like ruling, I think, which is, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And we saw like a little bit of that in Game of Thrones, because Jon was able to bond with Daenerys' dragon. So that's super interesting. I'm really interested to learn more about the dragons in general. Glance has said, sad that they're just instruments of war. Let them live. I agree.
Glance
Free the
is
dragons,
correct.
let them live their lives. It's really sad. But yeah, I'm excited just to learn more about the dragons in general. And I don't want to say how they operate, because they're like not machines, but just like how they bond with people, and just kind of just the hierarchy of the dragons and the people who are, riding the dragons. Because that was such a big deal in Game of Thrones. They made such a big deal about it. So I'm interested to know more about that lore. We also have Renera, who is Damon's niece. She is her quest is to rule in spite of the patriarchy. Obviously, we know that she is the daughter of Viserys, so she should be the ruler or be able to sit on the Iron Throne, but they are not allowing her to, which leads us to the Civil War. Anything else to add about her? Do you guys know anything else about her?
No, the only thing I will say is with the jumps, she's 7
Oh,
in the beginning, and then she jumps to 30, I think 32 something. Yeah, whatever
oh wow.
25 years is plus 7. I think that's
Yeah, I think
32.
that's
Great.
32.
Great
Yeah.
math. Great quick math. So that's going to be interesting, the juxtaposition between her being really young and then, becoming probably really hardened with the words of her father, who's trying to like push for her to be, the ruler of Westeros. Yeah, I think Josh already touched, like, she has a like really crazy dragon. She also rules Dragonstone when she gets older. Like, that's her domain. I believe. I think she gets that later. And I don't want to go too deep into detail because I'm sure that will happen and stuff, because I know her betrothed and whatever else, but we'll wait for the series to chat about that.
Do you know, Chanelle, do you know if they are for sure in the show following the same kind of like ages and timeline? Because I know that is like a big difference between the books and what they did with the original Game of Thrones series, was like they just kind of aged them all
Age them
up,
up.
condensed a
Yeah.
lot of those early
Yeah.
moments into. So do you know if the show is going that, or do you know for sure that they're doing like time jumps between older?
They're
young?
doing time jumps for sure. That's
Okay.
confirmed for sure. I think they are following the ages, because I think there's like I think when she gets married or whatever, like the halfway point, she would have been like a teenager or something like that. And I
Okay.
think that's sticking to that. So there's definitely time jumps. Like it's confirmed that there's like 25-year time jumps, because the Dance of Dragons is actually Dance of Dragons is actually in 129, right? So they would have to like talk about everything 25 years earlier or whatever, if that makes sense. So she would have to be super young. But yeah, I think they are going to stick to the ages with this one. The only reason they had escalated the ages of the other ones was because, it would not be very age appropriate to have them as like Daenerys is like a 14-year-old and
14.
Sansa is like 11 or 12 or however she was
Yeah.
getting married, or however old she was. So I think it made sense. John, it was 14 as well. Like, everyone's really young. So I think it made sense in that context. But for this context, yeah, they're like, it's definitely a fast forward for this.
Great.
Awesome. Cool. We also have Reinis Velaryon. So she was
the sister, right?
Yes, she was the sister, and she was passed over for the throne in favor of Viserys back in the day. So that's probably going to be one of the earlier timelines, I would assume.
Yeah.
Awesome.
She should be in both, probably. Like, I
Yeah.
can't confirm because I didn't read any of the novellas, but I feel like she plays a very vital role in the beginning, because she's kind of the voice that's in her niece's head. Like, you'll never get it. They never want to see a woman on the throne. They never gave it to me, you know? So I'm like, they'll never give it to you. So I feel like she might be like bitter. And if she has the Targaryen in her, probably a little crazy at this point. So
yeah.
She's also married to a very important person.
Yes, Corlys.
Corlys. So that's I think they control a lot of the seas and whatever. They're very good.
Yeah, I think his nickname, or he's also known as the Sea Snake, because of the many battles in the sea that he's.
Yeah, and their family, I think, is completely gone by the time we hit the Seven Kingdoms. Like, if they're not gone, you just don't hear about them. They're not as big an ally as, like, say, I was gonna say Greyjoys, but I feel like Greyjoys were their own thing and they didn't really do anything. They took that sea, basically.
They like pirated the sea.
Well, the Greyjoys are they're a bigger deal in the books than they are in the show, for sure.
Oh yeah, they're huge in the books.
We also have Otto and Alicent Hightower, their father and daughter. Father is the Hand of the King. He does not like Damon, apparently, and wants to prevent him from taking the throne. And Alicent was raised in the Red Keep and apparently is very politically savvy.
Yeah, I don't have much on that. I know that, actually, again, I won't go into detail because I'm not sure what will be shown. But what was the daughter's name again?
Alicent?
Alicent, yeah, Alicent, and will be a big part because the whole war was about the Greens and the Blacks in the book. So basically, it's about because basically the whole reason for Dance of Dragons is because when the king dies, it's a battle between his son with Alicent and the daughter's son, right? And who's both named Aemon, which is hilarious. Aemon the second and Aemon the third. But the whole thing was to show the fight between the two, or like the disapproval. The daughter would always wear black and the wife would always wear green, so it was always called the Greens and the Blacks, because the Greens were a very big thing in Highgarden and stuff, right? And I guess the High Towers probably ran Highgarden at this time before the Tyrells took over, or maybe not, but they're definitely in that area or whatever it is. So that she's gonna play. You can see in the trailer that those two are just fighting all the time, which makes sense.
Yeah.
West Side Story, Jets versus Sharks. It sounds like.
Yep, totally. We also have Mysaria, who is a trusted ally to Damon. That's all I have about Mysaria. I'm not sure if anybody knows anything more about her. Question? Not too sure.
What's her name?
Mysaria?
Oh, Mysaria's the mistress of Damon, right?
Okay. Yeah, I have it as trusted ally, but mistresses are also trusted allies.
You better trust your mistresses. I mean, that's a good life lesson, everybody.
I mean, you can be allies, but I think at one point he like gifts her a dragon egg. So like, I feel like
allies
you
with
give
benefits.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. Damon. It sounds like from the books is just like a total jerk to his. Like he does not like his wife whatsoever. So he just has this mistress.
I knew Matt Smith was typecasted for this role.
It makes sense. Yeah, I think she's like the ally, but she's really like his mistress for the most part.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the last character I had listed here is Sir Kristen Cole, which he plays the Kingsguard.
Yes, he is. So I forget who the Kingsguard is. So when the show starts in the first timeline, the Kingsguard, I forget what they call the head of the Kingsguard, but
the hand of the
something of the guard. I don't remember, but I think he becomes it later in the timeline or whatever. But I think he's like severely in love with the daughter with Renera. I can never say her name. I don't even know. Renera. We decided on Renera. Anyway,
we'll find out.
So I think he's in love with her at some point or something like that. But he's just like a really good fighter. He actually has beat Damon a couple times, I think, something like that. So, just a solid warrior. He gives very like there's so many names in this
so many names
series. Oh my god. Highgarden, the grandson who was like the really good warrior. He gives me that vibes, but I forget what his name is right now. Yes. I'm losing it. Renly's lover, whose name I can't think of right now.
I don't remember his name, but I know. And he ended up in the
Loris.
Yes, Loris. Yes.
Holy frig! Why could I? He's giving me very Loris vibes, except not on the down low. So he's out there. But I feel like he's gonna play a big part just because he's in love with Renera. So we'll see.
Awesome. That's the full list of characters that I have written down. I don't know if you guys know of anyone else who's going to be in the show that you guys want to cover.
Yeah, I don't.
It seems like they're going to be the major players.
Yeah, like you're going to have like the whole because the king's sister is married to the sea snake or whatever his name is. So their children are going to come into play. I don't want to spoil why they do, but they also will get tied in at some point. So the children are there. I'm not going to say their names. They're going to pop up or whatever. That's the only other that's the only other people I can think of that might pop in that are important, I guess.
Awesome. Cool. So this was really great. I mean, this is really good grounding for me, at least, into because I've like I think I said earlier, I kind of like shut my brain off to Game of Thrones as soon as the show ended.
Yeah,
and then I
me
saw
too.
these trailers popping up and I was like, I'm just going to ignore the trailers for now and decide when the show comes if I'm going to dig in. And then over the last week, I was like, all right, I'm just going to get all in. I know myself and I'm going to want to be part of the conversation when the show is live. So anything else that you guys want to cover tonight? I know this was a quick one, just a quick pre-show kickoff. We'll be back next week, but to discuss the premiere. But is there anything else prior to the premiere that we want to cover tonight?
Only because his name hasn't been said yet, but Raymond Javadi being back as well on the music.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah,
That's
like,
great news.
Yeah,
that makes sense. That had to happen.
No one has ever complained about Raymond Javadi's job on the original series. So
yeah,
he's probably the only one that has never
his job
any
is
backlash.
Yeah, it's like if you fired like John Williams from like a Star Wars movie.
Right.
Like I feel like it just does not fit. Also, y'all need to catch a Game of Thrones concert if it comes to your town.
Oh yeah, I've heard those are amazing.
They're very good.
Yeah. I've heard those are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, yeah, couldn't let the first podcast here end without at least his name being mentioned.
100%.
Yeah, no, thank you. He deserves all of the flowers. Awesome, cool. So we'll wrap it up here, but we are all very excited to come back and talk about the premiere and see what we talked about tonight, how it plays into what we actually see on the show. So we'll start wrapping up. Josh, anything to plug? Want to tell the people where they can find you?
You can find me, at Josh Kettles on Twitter. It's where I'm most active. I'll be more active during the Survivor season coming up as well, which I'm very excited about in the fall. That is pretty much all I have that's in the works that's announced right now. So yeah, just follow me there. I'll be sharing what's up next.
Awesome. Chanelle, where can the people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter, on Twitch, Coder Girl Chan. I stream like 3-4 days a week, variety games. I code once a week if you're into that too.
Award-winning streamer
life. Yeah. Not you plugging me. No kidding. Yeah. So you can catch me on Twitch a lot more. I'm on Twitter constantly. This is my only thing that I'm doing for Silent Podcast other than trying to get their website together. So, you can catch me here talking all Game of Thrones things because I'm obsessed. So set.
Awesome. Super excited to have you guys here. Anybody listening, you guys can find me on Twitter at RealSlimKatie or on twitch.tv/RealSlimKatie with an underscore. I've been just streaming, chatting, talking TV, talking other things. So feel free to drop a follow there. It's free to do so if you would like to support. I am on a few other things going on Silent Podcast. So you can find me with Carrie covering all things The Challenge USA on TJ Hates Quitters. And on the Cool Water Show with Carrie as well, talking all things the Real Housewives universe. We've been on a 2-week hiatus, but we will be back tomorrow for our 30th episode. We're going to be drinking a Buzzball. I've never had a Buzzball before, but we're going to be celebrating. Don't really know what to expect there. And you can find us talking all things Big Brother on Bounce Checks, covering Big Brother 24. Myself, Isaiah, Josiane, and Lance when he is able to join us. We actually had Azza join us on Friday, which was super incredible. She was amazing. I was super excited to talk to her. So feel free to check that out. That is on YouTube and everywhere you can listen to your podcasts. And I am late on bringing up our banner, but let me do that. You can also follow Silent Podcasts on social media. You can follow us on Twitter at @silent_podcasts. You can follow us on Twitch and YouTube at Silent Podcasts. You can go ahead and subscribe to us in all of those places. Please feel free to give us a review, a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast, if they allow you to rate us. We appreciate a 5-star. If you have 4 stars for tonight, just save your 5 stars for like next week when you think it's a 5-star podcast. But it does help us get discovered, so it would be super appreciated. We will have some new feeds coming soon. Right now, everything is in one main feed, but we are working very steadily towards getting some different feeds up and running for you guys, so we're not crowding your podcast app. So please stay tuned. We'll share that information for you when it's ready. In the meantime, we will see you all next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you then. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.